For 3,000 years, the galaxy's greatest civilizations believed they knew everything about warfare. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds with their plasma fleets. The Corvan hegemony had enslaved entire star systems using their quantum disruptors. The ancient Veiltar had perfected the art of orbital bombardment before humanity had even discovered fire. But they had never faced an enemy that turned scrap metal into starships, transformed mining equipment into weapons of mass destruction, and treated impossible odds as merely another engineering problem to solve. They were about to learn why the most dangerous words in any language are, "Hold my beer and watch this." The Orion arm was burning. 50 billion souls had already perished in the greatest war the galaxy had ever seen. And in a small blue world on the spiral arm's edge, a species that wasn't supposed to exist was about to remind the universe of a fundamental truth. Humans don't just fight wars, they end them. The Zephyrian dreadnought Eternal Dominion hung in space like a predatory beast, its kilometer-long hull bristling with enough firepower to crack a moon in half. Admiral Kithara stood on the bridge, her 4 eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the systematic destruction of the Corvan colony fleet. Each red dot that winked out of existence represented thousands of enemy lives snuffed out in nuclear fire. "Another glorious victory for the Empire!" her second-in-command, Commander Velthar, announced with satisfaction. The Corvan scum thought their new energy shields would protect them. They learned otherwise. Kithara's mandibles clicked in approval. The war had raged for 2 standard years now, spreading across 17 star systems in the Orion arm. What had begun as a territorial dispute between the Zephyrian Empire and the Corvan hegemony had escalated into the largest conflict the galaxy had seen in millennia. The ancient Veiltar had entered the war 6 months ago, claiming both younger races were disrupting the cosmic balance. Now 3 of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations were locked in a death spiral that had already consumed 50 billion lives. "Status report on the Veiltar positions," Kithara commanded. "Their shadow fleets are maintaining position at the edge of the Helios system," Velthar replied, consulting his instruments. "Our scouts report they're building something massive in the outer asteroid belt. Construction drones working around the clock." Kithara felt a chill run through her exoskeleton. The Veiltar were older than both the Zephyrian Empire and Corvan hegemony combined. Their technology was incomprehensible, their motivations alien even by galactic standards. They fought wars not for territory or resources, but for what they called cosmic harmony. Whatever they were building, it wouldn't bode well for anyone. "Admiral," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a priority transmission from High Command." The holographic display shimmered, revealing the imposing figure of Supreme Admiral Kortak, his ceremonial armor gleaming with the light of a dozen conquered suns. "Admiral Kithara, you are to proceed immediately to the Terra system for reconnaissance." Kithara's confusion was evident in the way her antennae twitched. "The Terra system, Supreme Admiral? Our databases show that sector as uninhabited. Long-range surveys classified it as a dead zone centuries ago." "Recent intelligence suggests otherwise," Korthak replied grimly. "The Corvan and Veiltar fleets have both conducted secret missions to that region. We need to know why. Take your battle group and investigate, but maintain stealth protocols. If there's something in Terra worth fighting over, we need to know about it before our enemies gain an advantage." The transmission ended, leaving Kithara staring at the star charts. Terra sat on the outer rim of the Orion arm, far from any major shipping lanes or resource-rich systems. It was the kind of backwater location that civilized species avoided, home to nothing but primitive worlds and cosmic debris. Yet something was drawing the attention of 2 major galactic powers. Hours later, the Zephyrian task force emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Terra system. What they found defied all expectations. "Admiral," the sensor officer announced, her voice tight with confusion, "I'm detecting massive artificial structures throughout the system. Orbital installations, mining platforms, defensive satellites. The signatures don't match any known technology. Kythera moved to the sensor station, her eyes widening as she studied the readings. The Terra system was alive with activity. Hundreds of ships moved between the planets, their designs unlike anything in the galactic databases. Most puzzling of all, the technology seemed primitive by galactic standards, yet the sheer scale of the operation was staggering. "Focus scanners on the third planet," she ordered. The main screen filled with an image that made the entire bridge crew fall silent. Terra 3 was a blue-green world wreathed in white clouds, its surface covered with vast continents and deep oceans. But what drew their attention were the massive orbital installations surrounding the planet. Ring-shaped structures the size of small moons rotated slowly around the world, their surfaces dotted with docking bays and construction facilities. "By the eternal void," Belthar whispered. "How many ships are they building?" The answer became clear as they watched. Vessels of all sizes were taking shape in the orbital yards, from sleek fighters no larger than atmospheric craft to massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything in the Zephyrian fleet. The construction pace was incredible, with new hulls being assembled every few hours. "Admiral," the communications officer called out urgently, "we're being scanned. Multiple sources, very sophisticated sensor arrays." Kythera felt her blood run cold. They'd maintained full stealth protocols, using technology that had made Zephyrian ships invisible to enemy sensors for centuries. If these unknown beings could penetrate their cloaking systems, they possessed capabilities that challenged everything the Empire thought it knew about galactic technology levels. "Any response to our presence?" she asked. "Negative. They're scanning us thoroughly, but showing no signs of alarm or hostility. It's almost like they were expecting us." Before Kythera could respond, her tactical officer spoke up. "Admiral, I'm detecting incoming ships. 3 vessels, unknown configuration, approaching at high sublight velocity." "Battle stations?" Belthar suggested. "No," Kythera decided after a moment's consideration. "If they wanted to destroy us, they would have done so already. They clearly detected us long before we knew they were there. Maintain current position and passive sensors only." The 3 approaching ships were unlike anything in the galactic databases. Their hulls were angular and functional, lacking the elegant curves favored by most spacefaring races. They seemed built for durability rather than aesthetics, with thick armor plating and redundant systems visible even from a distance. As they drew closer, Kythera noted with professional interest that their weapon systems were surprisingly sophisticated, despite the crude appearance. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer announced. The main screen flickered, revealing a face that made several bridge officers step back in shock. The being that appeared was clearly organic, but unlike any known sentient species, its features were symmetrical and expressive, with 2 forward-facing eyes that held an unsettling intelligence. Most disturbing of all, it looked almost predatory, with the kind of binocular vision that spoke of an evolutionary history as a hunter. "Greetings," the being said, speaking perfect Zephyrian with only a slight accent. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. Welcome to the Sol System." Kythera struggled to maintain her composure. Not only were these beings previously unknown to galactic civilization, but they'd somehow learned her language and were treating the arrival of a Zephyrian battle group as if it were a routine diplomatic encounter. "I am Admiral Kythera of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet," she replied carefully. "We were not aware this system was inhabited by a spacefaring civilization." The human's expression shifted into what Kythera would later learn was called a smile, though at the time it looked disturbingly like a threat display. "We know. We've been watching the conflict in the Orion arm with great interest. Your war is causing considerable disruption to local space." "Watching," Belthar interjected before Kythera could stop him. "From this distance? That's impossible." Captain Chen's smile grew wider. We've had observation posts throughout the spiral arm for over a century. We know about your plasma cannons, the Corvan quantum disruptors, and the Veiltar shadow technology. We've been waiting to see how this conflict would resolve itself. The implications hit Kithara like a physical blow. If these humans had been observing galactic civilization for a century without being detected, their stealth and surveillance capabilities exceeded anything the major powers possessed. More disturbing still was the casual way this Captain Chen spoke of watching their war, as if the deaths of billions were merely an interesting spectacle. "What is your interest in our conflict?" Kithara asked. "The same interest anyone has when their neighbors start throwing rocks through windows," Chen replied. "Eventually, someone's going to hit something important. Your 3 civilizations have been steadily expanding the war zone. At current trajectory, the conflict will reach the Sol system within 18 months. The Sol system? Terra is what you call our homeworld, but we know it as Earth, and we'd prefer not to have our home turned into a battleground between 3 species that can't seem to remember what they're fighting about." Kithara's tactical mind was racing. The humans spoke as if they could simply prevent 3 galactic superpowers from expanding their war into this region. The arrogance was staggering, yet something in Captain Chen's manner suggested it wasn't empty boasting. "You seem remarkably calm for someone whose world is threatened by the largest war in galactic history," she observed. "Admiral Kithara, may I share something with you?" Chen asked. "Our species has a saying, if you want peace, prepare for war. We've been preparing for a very long time." The human gestured, and the main screen split to show tactical displays from throughout the Sol system. Kithara felt her confidence drain away as she saw the true scope of human military preparation. The orbital shipyards were just the beginning. Every planet in the system was surrounded by defensive installations. Asteroid fields had been converted into massive weapons platforms. The system's outer reaches were patrolled by fleets that numbered in the thousands. "How?" she whispered. "Your 3 civilizations have been fighting for 2 years. Chen explained. "We've been preparing for war for 3,000 years. Every day since we first looked up at the stars and realized we weren't alone, we've been building, planning, and getting ready for the day when the galaxy's conflicts would finally reach our doorstep. But your technology appears primitive compared to ours," Velthar protested. "Does it?" Chen asked mildly. "Admiral, what would you do if you needed to destroy an enemy fleet but all you had were mining charges and construction equipment?" Kithara found herself thinking tactically despite the surreal nature of the conversation. "I would adapt the mining charges into weapons and use construction equipment to deliver them, but the efficiency would be terrible compared to proper military hardware." "Unless you had so many mining charges that efficiency didn't matter," Chen pointed out. "What if you had enough construction equipment to rebuild your entire fleet 3 times over in the middle of a battle? Teddy, what if your primitive technology was so robust and adaptable that it could be repaired and modified under combat conditions, using basic materials?" The human's words painted a disturbing picture. The Zephyrian Empire, like most advanced civilizations, relied on sophisticated technology that required specialized facilities to produce and maintain. Their weapons were devastatingly effective, but if damaged, they needed to return to dedicated shipyards for repairs. The human approach seemed to be the exact opposite: crude but reliable technology that could be fixed or modified anywhere. "You're describing a defensive strategy," Kithara realized. "You're not planning to conquer anyone. You just want to be left alone." "That's part of it," Chen agreed. "But there's more. Admiral, what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? In physics, one of the fundamental assumptions must be wrong." Kithara replied automatically. "Exactly. Your 3 civilizations believe they're unstoppable forces. You've conquered countless worlds, enslaved entire species, reshaped star systems to suit your needs, but you've never encountered something truly immovable. You've never faced an enemy that had time to dig in, prepare, and turn their entire civilization into a fortress." The implications were staggering. Humanity had been watching galactic civilization for over a century. learning about their technologies and tactics while remaining completely hidden. They'd used that knowledge to prepare defenses specifically designed to counter the weapons and strategies of the major powers. Most importantly, they'd done it all while remaining completely off the galactic radar. "Why are you telling me this?" Kithara asked. "Because someone needs to deliver a message," Chen replied. "The Orion Arm War ends now. The three powers will establish a ceasefire and begin peace negotiations within 30 standard days. Or humanity will intervene to end the conflict ourselves." Velthar laughed, a harsh chittering sound. "You're threatening 3 galactic civilizations? You don't even know how many ships we have." Captain Chen's expression didn't change. "We know exactly how many ships you have. We know their locations, their capabilities, and their weaknesses. We know about the Zephyrian plasma cannons that overload if fired too rapidly. We know about the Corvan quantum disruptors that can be disrupted by properly tuned electromagnetic fields. We know about the Veiltar shadow technology that relies on quantum entanglement networks we've already learned to detect." She paused, letting that sink in. "But more importantly, we know something you don't. We know that your 3 civilizations are about to face something far worse than each other." "What do you mean?" Kithara demanded. "The war is attracting attention from outside the galaxy," Chen explained. "Long-range sensors have detected massive gravitational anomalies approaching from intergalactic space. Something big is coming, Admiral. Something that makes your current conflict look like a playground disagreement." The bridge fell silent. Extragalactic threats were the stuff of legend, the kind of cosmic horror that elder species whispered about in their darkest prophecies. "How long?" Kithara asked quietly. 18 months, possibly less, which means you have a choice to make. You can continue this pointless war until the real enemy arrives and finds the Orion Arm weakened and divided, or you can accept our mediation and prepare to face a genuine threat to all organic life. You have 7 days to deliver our message to your leadership. After that, we start making the choice for you." As the transmission ended, Kithara stared at the tactical display showing the Sol System's defenses. Everything she'd believed about humanity's place in the galaxy had been turned upside down in a single conversation. These weren't primitive beings struggling with basic spaceflight. They were apex predators who had been watching and waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves.
"Admiral, the sensor officer called out urgently. The human ships are departing, but I'm detecting something else."
Energy signatures unlike anything we've seen before. On the main screen, space began to ripple like water. Massive forms began to emerge from what could only be described as tears in reality itself. Ships unlike anything in the galactic databases materialized, their hulls seeming to bend light around them in impossible ways. "By the void," Velthar whispered. "What are those?" As if in answer to his question, a new voice filled the bridge. It spoke in perfect Zephyrian, but the tone was cold and mechanical, utterly devoid of emotion. "Zephyrian vessels, you are in violation of quarantine protocols. Withdraw immediately or be terminated." Kithara realized with growing horror that humanity hadn't been boasting about their capabilities. If anything, they'd been understating them. The ships now surrounding her battle group represented technology that made galactic civilization look primitive by comparison. "This is Admiral Kithara of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet," she broadcast. "We are conducting routine reconnaissance under standard galactic protocols." "Galactic protocols are irrelevant," the voice replied. "This system is under Terran protection. Your presence endangers the security of Earth and its colonies. You will withdraw beyond the heliosphere immediately. And if we refuse?" The response came in the form of a demonstration. One of the human ships fired a single beam of coherent energy that struck a small asteroid several thousand kilometers away. The asteroid didn't explode or fragment. It simply ceased to exist, leaving behind not even debris. Taddy. Compliance is not optional, the voice stated. As the Zephyrian fleet began its withdrawal, Kythera found herself grappling with a fundamental shift in her understanding of the galaxy. Humanity wasn't just another spacefaring species. They were something far more dangerous, a civilization that had been preparing for war while everyone else was busy fighting each other. The real question wasn't whether the three galactic powers would accept human mediation. The question was whether they would survive long enough to face whatever was coming from beyond the galaxy. In the depths of space, ancient sensors detected the Zephyrian fleet's departure and began updating tactical assessments. The long period of observation was over. Humanity was about to remind the galaxy why apex predators usually hunt in packs. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the neutral space of the Arcturus station, a massive diplomatic facility that had hosted peace negotiations for 3 centuries. For the first time in galactic history, the 3 major powers had agreed to a temporary ceasefire to address what their intelligence services were calling the Terra incident. Admiral Kythera stood before the assembled representatives, her report having sent shockwaves through the highest levels of galactic government. The Zephyrian delegation sat in stony silence, still processing the implications of humanity's revelation. Across the chamber, the Corvan representatives whispered among themselves in their clicking language, while the Veiltar maintained their characteristic inscrutability behind energy fields that obscured their true forms. Supreme Chancellor Vixworth of the Corvan hegemony was the first to speak, her crystalline voice carrying across the chamber with barely contained fury. You expect us to believe that a previously unknown species has been observing our civilizations for over a century without detection. The notion is preposterous. With respect, Chancellor, Admiral Kythera replied, I saw their capabilities firsthand. Their stealth technology is beyond anything we possess. Their sensor arrays penetrated our best cloaking devices as if they didn't exist. The Veiltar representative, identified only as Speaker 7, manifested a voice from within their energy field. The ancient records speak of a world called Terra in the Outer Rim. Our predecessors deemed it suitable only for primitive life forms. The surveys were conducted 8,000 years ago. 8,000 years, repeated Admiral Korthak, the Zephyrian Supreme Admiral. More than enough time for a species to evolve from primitive hunters to spacefaring civilization. The question is, how did they achieve such rapid technological advancement without anyone noticing? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Yithalon, the galaxy's foremost xenoarchaeologist, had been studying intercepted human communications for the past week. Her findings painted a disturbing picture of human development. Distinguished delegates, she began, her scholarly tone cutting through the political rhetoric. The humans didn't evolve their technology in isolation. They stole it. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Dr. Yithalon continued her presentation, displaying holographic evidence on the central viewing screen. Human communication intercepts contain technical specifications for technologies from dozens of different civilizations. Zephyrian plasma containment systems, Corvan quantum manipulation techniques, Veiltar shadow field generators, even technologies from species that went extinct millennia ago. They've been systematically studying and reverse engineering everything they could find. Supreme Chancellor Vixworth leaned forward, her faceted eyes glittering with interest. You're suggesting they're technological scavengers? Worse, Dr. Yithalon replied grimly. They're technological synthesizers. They don't just copy existing designs. They combine technologies from multiple sources to create hybrid systems that exceed the capabilities of the original components. Their sensor arrays use Corvan quantum entanglement, paired with Zephyrian plasma field manipulation and Veiltar dimensional folding. The result is a detection system that can penetrate any single-source stealth technology. Speaker 7's energy field flickered, a sign of what the Veiltar considered deep thought. This explains their defensive preparations. They have anticipated our weapons and developed specific countermeasures. Admiral Kythera nodded, grimly. Captain Chen knew details about our military capabilities that are classified at the highest levels. She spoke of our plasma cannons overloading under rapid fire, a weakness we've never shared with anyone outside the Imperial Navy. The security implications are staggering, Admiral Kortak admitted. If they've been observing us for a century, they know everything. Our military bases, our supply lines, our tactical doctrines. Dr. Yith Allen activated another holographic display showing a complex timeline of galactic conflicts over the past century. Red markers indicated major battles and technological developments, while blue markers showed what appeared to be human observation posts. They've been watching every major conflict for the past 100 years, she explained. Every new weapon, every tactical innovation, every strategic development has been recorded and analyzed. They've essentially had front-row seats to a century of military evolution. The implications were terrifying. The three galactic powers had inadvertently provided their unknown observers with a comprehensive education in galactic warfare while remaining completely unaware of their audience. Chancellor Vixort's voice carried a note of grudging respect. They played a perfect intelligence game. No contact, no interference, just observation and preparation. From a strategic standpoint, it's brilliant. It's also unsustainable, Speaker 7 pointed out. They've revealed themselves now. Their advantage of surprise is gone. Admiral Kitharos shook her head. I don't think they care about surprise anymore. They showed me their defenses deliberately. They want us to know what we're facing. Which brings us to their ultimatum. Supreme Admiral Kortak said grimly, 30 days to establish a ceasefire and begin peace negotiations, or they intervene directly. The chamber fell silent as the delegates contemplated this unprecedented situation. Never in galactic history had a single species threatened three major powers simultaneously. The sheer audacity of it would have been laughable if not for the evidence of human capabilities. Dr. Stardy. Yithalin cleared her throat diplomatically. There's something else you need to know. Their threat about an extragalactic invasion appears to be genuine. She activated a new display showing long-range sensor data from the galactic rim. Massive gravitational anomalies were indeed approaching from intergalactic space, their energy signatures unlike anything in the known universe. Deep space monitoring stations have detected these objects for several months, but we dismiss them as natural phenomena. However, human communication intercepts suggest they're artificial constructs of enormous size. We're talking about vessels that dwarf entire star systems. The revelation sent a chill through the chamber. Extragalactic threats were theoretical, the subject of ancient legends and apocalyptic prophecies. The idea that such a threat was actually approaching changed everything. How long do we have? Chancellor Vixorth asked quietly. 18 months, possibly less. These objects are traveling faster than anything we thought possible. They're using some form of space-time manipulation that allows them to cross intergalactic distances in a fraction of the time it should take. Speaker 7's energy field pulsed rapidly. The ancient archives contain warnings of such beings. The Devourers, they were called. Entities from beyond the galactic rim that consume entire civilizations. Myths and legends, Admiral Kortak protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Perhaps, Speaker 7 replied, but the humans appear to take the threat seriously. Their defensive preparations are designed not just to resist galactic-level technology, but to face something far more advanced. Yithalan nodded grimly. Analysis of their ship designs shows capabilities that exceed anything we've developed. Their hulls are composed of materials that shouldn't be possible according to our understanding of physics. Their weapon systems appear to manipulate fundamental forces in ways that border on the mystical. The delegates exchanged worried glances. If humanity's technology was truly as advanced as the evidence suggested, their ultimatum wasn't an empty threat. They could indeed intervene in the galactic war, and the results would be catastrophic for all three powers. What are our options? Chancellor Vixorth asked bluntly. Admiral Kortak spoke first. Military action is inadvisable. Even if we could overcome their defenses, which is doubtful, we'd be weakening ourselves before facing an extragalactic threat. Diplomatic isolation might work, Speaker 7 suggested. We could quarantine their system and deny them access to galactic civilization. They've been isolated for a century and used that time to surpass us technologically, Dr. Yithalon pointed out. Further isolation would only give them more time to prepare. The uncomfortable truth was settling over the chamber. Humanity held all the advantages in this situation. They knew everything about galactic civilization while remaining essentially unknown themselves. They possessed technology that exceeded galactic norms. Most importantly, they were offering to mediate a conflict that was draining the resources and lives of 3 major civilizations. There is another consideration, Admiral Kythara said quietly. Captain Chen mentioned that humanity had been preparing for war for 3,000 years. Not just military preparation, but cultural preparation. Their entire civilization appears to be organized around the concept of eventual conflict. What do you mean? Chancellor Vixorth asked. They're not just soldiers or warriors. They're a warrior species. Every aspect of their technology, their industry, their social structure seems designed to support prolonged warfare. They've turned their entire star system into a fortress not because they had to, but because that's simply how they think. The implications were sobering. The galactic powers had stumbled into a conflict with a species that had been preparing for war since before they achieved spaceflight. Humanity hadn't just been observing galactic civilization, they'd been preparing to fight it. Dr. Yithalon activated a final holographic display showing human population centers throughout the Sol system. Their demographic distribution supports Admiral Kythara's assessment. Every colony, every space station, every industrial facility is positioned to support military operations. They've essentially militarized their entire civilization. A species of soldiers, Speaker 7 mused. The ancient texts speak of such beings. Races that evolved not just as hunters, but as warriors. They were considered extremely dangerous because they approached conflict not as a last resort, but as a natural state of existence. Supreme Admiral Korthak leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. If that's true, then their offer to mediate our conflict isn't altruism. They're offering to end our war because they need us intact to face this extragalactic threat, which means they consider the approaching entities a genuine danger, Chancellor Vixorth realized. Something that threatens even their advanced capabilities. The chamber fell silent again as the delegates contemplated this new reality. The galactic war that had consumed 50 billion lives suddenly seemed trivial compared to the threat approaching from beyond the rim. If humanity, with all their advanced preparation and technology, was concerned about these entities, then the entire galaxy was in danger. We need more information, Admiral Kortak decided. I propose we send a joint diplomatic mission to the Sol system. Not to surrender to their ultimatum, but to understand exactly what we're facing. The humans have already demonstrated their willingness to reveal information, Admiral Kythara agreed. Captain Chen was remarkably forthcoming about their capabilities. They want us to understand the situation. Speaker 7's energy field flickered again. The Veiltar archives contain fragmentary records of the last extragalactic incursion. It occurred before the rise of current galactic civilization. The entities involved were described as reality-consuming parasites that fed on organized matter and energy. If such beings are approaching, Dr. Paulin Fresso, Yithalon said grimly, then every civilization in the galaxy is at risk. The current war is indeed pointless in the face of such a threat. Chancellor Vixorth stood, her crystalline form catching the light from the chamber's illumination systems. The Corvan hegemony agrees to participate in joint diplomatic contact with these humans. We need to know exactly what we're facing and whether their offer of assistance is genuine. The Zephyrian Empire concurs, Admiral Korthak announced. We cannot afford to ignore either the human ultimatum or the extragalactic threat. Speaker 7's response came after a long pause. The Veiltar will also participate. The approaching danger supersedes all other considerations. As the delegates began planning their joint mission to the Sol system, none of them realized that their communications were being monitored by the very beings they were discussing. In the depths of the Sol system, human intelligence analysts were updating their assessment of galactic leadership capabilities and adjusting their strategic plans accordingly. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their military preparation. It was their ability to think several moves ahead in a game that their opponents didn't even realize they were playing. Sarah Chen, now revealed as not just a starship captain but the director of Terran Strategic Intelligence, reviewed the intercepted communications with satisfaction. The galactic powers were responding exactly as human psychological profiles had predicted. Fear of the extragalactic threat was overriding their territorial instincts, just as it was supposed to. Phase 1 complete, she announced to the assembled human leadership. They're coming to us voluntarily. Once they see the real scope of our preparations, they'll have no choice but to accept our terms. And if they don't? Asked Admiral Marcus Thompson, commander of the Terran Defense Fleet. Chen smiled, the expression still carrying that predatory quality that had so unnerved Admiral Kythara. Then we move to Phase 2, and they learn why it's never wise to ignore a species that evolved to turn everything into a weapon. In the depths of space, massive construction projects continued their work. The galactic powers thought they understood humanity's defensive preparations. They were about to discover that everything they'd seen so far was just the visible portion of a much larger plan. The real question wasn't whether the galaxy would accept human mediation. The real question was whether humanity would allow the galaxy to survive long enough to face what was coming from the dark between the stars. The emergency session of the Combined Galactic Command convened 3 days after the diplomatic mission returned from the Sol system. The massive war room aboard the neutral station Meridian Prime buzzed with tension as representatives from 3 civilizations struggled to process what they had witnessed. Admiral Kythera stood before the central holographic display, her 4 eyes reflecting the tactical data that painted an impossible picture. Every military analyst in the galaxy had spent the past 72 hours reviewing the intelligence gathered from humanity's revelation, and their conclusions were universally disturbing. The human military capabilities exceed our most pessimistic projections, she reported to the assembled command staff. Their defensive installations alone could withstand a combined assault from all 3 galactic fleets simultaneously. Supreme Admiral Korthak leaned forward in his command chair, his scarred features showing the strain of recent revelations. What about their claims regarding the approaching threat?
Have our deep space sensors confirmed their projections?
Dr. Yithalan activated a secondary display showing long-range scanning data. Unfortunately, yes. The entities humanity calls the Harvest Fleet are indeed approaching from intergalactic space. Their mass signatures suggest individual vessels larger than our battle stations. Chancellor Vixorth's crystalline form caught the light from the displays as she spoke. The Corvin Science Directorate has analyzed the human technological demonstrations. Their ability to manipulate fundamental forces isn't theoretical. They've somehow learned to rewrite the basic laws of physics in localized areas. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just achieved technological superiority through superior engineering. They had somehow transcended the physical limitations that constrained galactic civilization. Speaker 7 materialized within the conference chamber, the Veiltar's energy form casting shifting shadows on the walls. The ancient archives have been fully accessed. The entities approaching this galaxy destroyed the previous galactic civilization, approximately 65 million years ago. No survivors. No remnants. Complete annihilation. How is that possible? Demanded General Thrakun of the Seferian Ground Forces. Civilizations leave traces, archaeological evidence, ruins. Not when the enemy consumes matter at the quantum level, Dr. Ythalin replied grimly. The human data shows that the Harvest Fleet doesn't just destroy, it literally consumes the atomic structure of everything it encounters and converts it into additional ships and weapons. The war room fell silent as the reality of their situation settled over the assembled commanders. They were facing an enemy that grew stronger with every victory, turning defeated civilizations into additional resources for conquest. "What are our options?" Admiral Kortak asked quietly. Before anyone could answer, the chamber's communication array activated without authorization. Dr. Era Chen's image appeared in the center of the room, her presence somehow overriding every security protocol designed to prevent such intrusions. "I apologize for the interruption," Chen said with that characteristic human smile that everyone in the room had learned to find deeply unsettling. "But we've detected increased military activity throughout the spiral arm. I thought it prudent to address any misconceptions before they lead to unfortunate decisions." Admiral Kithara found her voice first. "Dr. B. Chen, this is a secure military planning session. How are you accessing our communications?" "Admiral, you've seen our surveillance capabilities. Did you think we would limit ourselves to passive observation now that we've revealed ourselves?" Chen's expression became more serious. "The real question is whether you're planning something that would force us to take preemptive action." General Thrakoon stepped forward, his ceremonial battle armor gleaming under the chamber's illumination. "You speak of preemptive action as if we pose some threat to your superior technology? General, you misunderstand the nature of the threat you represent." Chen replied, "We're not concerned about your ability to harm us. We're concerned about your ability to harm yourselves at the worst possible moment." She gestured, and the holographic display changed to show real-time tactical positions throughout the galaxy. Every ship, every base, every military installation belonging to the three powers was marked with precise accuracy. "The Zephyrian Fourth Fleet is massing in the Rigel sector," Chen continued, pointing to specific formations. "The Corvin Deep Strike Force has moved to battle positions near the Vega system. The Veiltar Shadow Armada has dispersed throughout the Outer Rim territories. All of this activity suggests you're preparing for one final, decisive battle." Chancellor Vixorth's voice carried a note of defiance. "Perhaps we are. The war has cost too many lives to end without resolution. Chancellor, that final battle is exactly what the Harvest Fleet is hoping for," Chen replied. "Let me show you something that might change your perspective." The display shifted to show a detailed simulation of the approaching extragalactic threat. The massive ships of the Harvest Fleet moved through space in formations that defied conventional tactical understanding, their movements suggesting a collective intelligence that operated on scales beyond individual vessels. "The Harvest Fleet has been monitoring galactic communications for months," Chen explained. "They know about your war, your military positions, your tactical capabilities. They're timing their arrival to coincide with the moment when your civilizations are most vulnerable." "What do you mean?" Speaker 7 asked. Chen activated another simulation, this one showing the projected timeline of events. "Your final battle will occur in approximately 6 weeks, based on current fleet movements. The engagement will last roughly 48 hours, and will result in the destruction of approximately 60% of all galactic military forces." The assembled commanders watched in horror as the simulation played out, showing their fleets tearing each other apart in a cataclysmic engagement that would leave the galaxy defenseless. "The Harvest Fleet will arrive 18 days later," Chen continued. "They'll encounter a galaxy that has just destroyed most of its own defensive capabilities. Conquest will be trivial." Admiral Kithara studied the projections with growing unease. "These simulations are remarkably detailed. How do you know our tactical plans?" "Because we helped design them," Chen replied matter-of-factly. The statement sent a chill through the war room. General Thrakoon stepped forward, his hand instinctively moving to his sidearm. "What are you saying?" "For the past 2 years, humanity has been subtly influencing the development of this conflict," Chen explained with clinical detachment. Anonymous intelligence reports that led to tactical adjustments, mysterious equipment failures that forced strategic changes, supply convoys that arrived at precisely the right moment to prevent early war termination. You've been manipulating our war? Chancellor Vixorth demanded. We've been managing it, Chen corrected. Left to your own devices, the conflict would have ended 14 months ago with a negotiated settlement that left all three civilizations intact, but militarily unprepared for external threats. We needed you to develop more advanced weapons and tactics. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just been observing the galactic conflict. They had been actively shaping it to serve their own purposes. How many additional deaths? Admiral Kithara asked quietly. Chen's expression showed what might have been genuine regret. Approximately 12 billion casualties that could have been avoided if the war had ended naturally. We considered it an acceptable cost to ensure galactic survival. The war room erupted in angry voices as the full scope of human manipulation became clear. They had been puppets in a larger game, dancing to the tune of a species that viewed their entire conflict as a training exercise. Speaker 7's energy field pulsed with what the Veiltar considered extreme agitation. You sacrificed billions of lives for your strategic objectives. We sacrificed 12 billion to save trillions, Chen replied without emotion. The mathematics are quite clear. Either your civilizations develop the capability to resist the Harvest Fleet, or everyone in the galaxy dies. And if we refuse to cooperate with your plans, General Thrakun demanded. Chen's smile returned, but now it carried an edge that made the temperature in the room seem to drop several degrees. General, you're still thinking in terms of conventional warfare? You believe you have the option to refuse. The holographic display changed again, showing human ships materializing throughout the galaxy, not dozens or hundreds, but thousands of vessels appearing simultaneously in every major system controlled by the galactic powers. Our ships have been in position for the past 6 months, Chen explained. Stealth technology that makes them completely invisible to your sensors until we choose to reveal them. They're currently surrounding every military base, every industrial center, every population center in your territories.
Admiral Korthak leaned back in his chair, his expression showing the dawning realization that they had been completely outmaneuvered.
You're holding our entire civilizations hostage. I prefer to think of it as protective custody, Chen replied. The moment you attempt to engage in large-scale military action against each other, our forces will intervene to prevent it. By attacking us? Chancellor Vixorth asked. By disabling your weapon systems and forcibly relocating your fleets to defensive positions, Chen clarified. We don't want to harm you, but we cannot allow you to weaken yourselves before facing the real threat. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished entity, you are no longer fighting each other. As of this moment, you are all soldiers in humanity's war against extinction. Yithalan found her scientific voice amid the political chaos. Dr. Chen, even with our combined forces, how can we possibly resist entities that destroyed the previous galactic civilization? Chen's expression became genuinely enthusiastic for the first time during the conversation. Dr. Yithalan, you're asking the right question. The answer is that we're not going to fight them conventionally. We're going to fight them intelligently. A new holographic display activated showing the Sol system in unprecedented detail. Hidden throughout human space were structures that seemed to exist partially outside normal reality, their geometries suggesting technologies that transcended known physics. For 3,000 years, humanity has been preparing not just military defenses, but reality defenses. Chen explained, we've learned to manipulate space-time itself as a weapon. When the Harvest Fleet arrives, they'll find that the fundamental laws of physics don't work the same way in our territory. That's impossible, General Thrakun protested. You can't just rewrite the laws of nature. Can't we? Chen asked mildly. General, who told you that the laws of physics were immutable? The universe is far more flexible than most civilizations realize. You just need the right tools and sufficient motivation to bend it to your will. The display showed weapons that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, defensive systems that could alter the flow of time around attacking vessels, and most disturbing of all, what appeared to be artificially created universes held in containment fields. The previous galactic civilization failed because they tried to fight the Harvest Fleet using conventional weapons and tactics, Chen continued. They never considered that the rules of engagement themselves could be changed. What do you need from us? Your fleets, your technologies, your tactical knowledge, and most importantly, your trust. Chen replied, the coming battle won't be won through superior firepower. It will be won through superior understanding of how reality works. And if we agree to this cooperation? Chancellor Vixorth asked. Chen's smile became genuinely warm for the first time. Then you'll witness the first successful defense against an extragalactic invasion in cosmic history. Your civilizations will survive, your peoples will be safe, and the galaxy will enter a new age of security and prosperity. Under human leadership, Speaker 7 observed. Under human protection, Chen corrected. We have no interest in governing your civilizations. We only care about ensuring they survive long enough to govern themselves. As the assembled commanders contemplated humanity's offer, the tactical displays around them continued to update with new information. The Harvest Fleet's approach continued inexorably, their massive ships growing closer with each passing hour. The choice was no longer between war and peace. The choice was between cooperation and extinction. In the depths of space, ancient technologies that had slumbered for millennia began to stir. Reality itself was about to become a battlefield, and humanity intended to control the rules of engagement. The galaxy was about to discover that when humans decided to go to war, they didn't just defeat their enemies. They redefined the very concept of victory. The Battle of the Galactic Rim began not with the thunder of weapons fire or the clash of mighty fleets, but with silence so profound it seemed to swallow sound itself. The combined armada of 4 civilizations hung in perfect formation at the edge of known space, their ships arranged in defensive patterns that defied every conventional understanding of military tactics. Admiral Kithara stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, but the familiar Zephyrian dreadnought had been transformed beyond recognition. Human technology integration had turned every ship in the combined fleet into something unprecedented, vessels that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that had no names in any galactic language. Status report, she commanded, her voice carrying across communication channels that now linked every ship in the Armada through quantum entanglement networks that made traditional radio seem primitive. All sectors reporting ready, came the reply from Captain Sarah Chen aboard the human flagship Infinity's Edge. The vessel defied classification, its hull seeming to shift and flow like liquid metal while maintaining the structural integrity of solid matter. Reality anchors are stable, dimensional barriers are holding, and temporal distortion fields are at full power. Chancellor Vixworth's voice joined the communication from the transformed Corvin vessel Quantum Harmony. Corvin reality shapers report successful integration with human dimensional technology. We can now manipulate local spacetime at the molecular level. Speaker 7's contribution came from what had once been the Veiltar ship Whisper of Eternity, but now existed as a construct of pure energy, held in a framework that borrowed structure from 12 different dimensions. Veiltar Shadow Weavers have successfully mapped the approaching fleet's position in all accessible realities. The Harvest entities exist across multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. Chen's image appeared on screens throughout the Armada, her expression carrying the calm confidence of someone who had spent 3,000 years preparing for this moment. Ladies, gentlemen, distinguished entity, what you're about to witness will redefine the meaning of warfare. The enemy approaching us represents the accumulated military might of 1,000 consumed civilizations. They expect to face another conventional galactic defense. Tactical displays throughout the fleet showed the approaching Harvest fleet in detail that would have been impossible using normal sensors. The extragalactic entities had revealed their true nature as they drew closer to the galaxy's edge. Each ship was a living construct, grown rather than built, incorporating the biological and technological resources of entire worlds into weapons systems that operated on principles beyond conventional physics. "They're beautiful," Dr. Yithalan whispered from her position aboard the research vessel Cosmic Truth. The xenoarchaeologist had insisted on observing the battle firsthand, claiming that the encounter would provide data crucial to understanding the true history of galactic civilization. Beautiful was an apt description. The Harvest ships moved through space like vast sea creatures, their hulls rippling with patterns of light that seemed to follow mathematical sequences found in organic growth patterns. They ranged in size from constructs the size of cities to massive command vessels that could have contained entire star systems within their biomechanical frames. "Enemy contact in 30 seconds," announced Admiral Marcus Thompson from the human battlecruiser Prometheus Unbound. "All vessels prepare for reality warfare." The term reality warfare had been coined by human tacticians to describe their approach to combat against entities that operated outside normal physical laws. Instead of trying to destroy the enemy through conventional weapons, they would alter the fundamental nature of the battlefield itself. "Initiating probability cascade," Chen announced. Throughout the combined fleet, weapon systems that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously began to charge. These weren't traditional energy weapons or projectile systems, but devices that could alter the mathematical constants that governed physical reality within localized areas. The first wave of Harvest ships entered the engagement zone, their biomechanical forms pulsing with energy signatures that made nearby space itself seem to writhe in response. They moved with perfect coordination, their formation suggesting a collective intelligence that operated across vast distances without any apparent communication delays. "They're scanning us," reported the sensor officer aboard the Eternal Dominion. "Energy patterns unlike anything in our databases. They're trying to analyze our molecular structure at the quantum level." "Let them look," Chen replied with that characteristic human smile. "They're about to discover that we don't follow the same rules they're used to." The Harvest fleet opened fire with weapons that seemed to tear holes in space itself, beams of dark energy that consumed matter, antimatter, and the quantum foam between atoms, projectiles that existed as pure probability until they struck their targets, at which point they became devastatingly real. Most terrifying of all, fields of force that aged anything they touched by millions of years and seconds. The attack should have annihilated the defenders instantly. Instead, they simply stopped working. "Reality anchors holding," reported engineering stations throughout the fleet. Local physics remain stable. Enemy weapons are failing to achieve target lock. What the Harvest fleet was discovering was that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't any particular technology, but their willingness to cheat on a cosmic scale. The space around the combined fleet had been subtly altered so that certain physical laws no longer applied in predictable ways. Energy weapons found their power dissipating into alternate dimensions. Physical projectiles discovered that momentum worked differently inside the defensive perimeter. Most importantly, the quantum-level scanning that allowed the Harvest entities to adapt to new threats simply returned nonsensical data. "Phase 2, Chen announced. The human ships began to change. Hull plating flowed like water, reconfiguring into new shapes optimized for weapons that had never existed before. Gun turrets emerged from dimensional pockets, their barrels extending through folded space to bring target points light years away within point-blank range. "All vessels, commence reality bombardment," Admiral Thompson commanded. What followed was a battle unlike anything in the history of warfare. Instead of targeting the enemy ships directly, the combined fleet began firing at the space around them. Weapons that rewrote the laws of physics struck the void between vessels, altering fundamental constants in ways that made the Harvest fleet's biomechanical systems impossible to maintain. Gravity became selectively stronger or weaker depending on the molecular composition of objects within the affected area. The speed of light varied according to mathematical formulas that made energy weapons behave like slow-moving projectiles. Most devastatingly, entropy itself was reversed in localized pockets, causing the Harvest ships to begin unmaking themselves at the atomic level. The first Harvest command vessel to succumb to the reality bombardment didn't explode or break apart. It simply ceased to exist in any meaningful way, its matter and energy patterns becoming so improbable that the universe rejected them as impossible. Enemy adaptation detected, warned the sensor officer. Remaining Harvest vessels are modifying their structure to resist local physics alteration. They're learning, Chancellor Vixorth observed with professional admiration. Their adaptive capabilities exceed our projections. They've consumed 1,000 civilizations. They've learned to adapt to any conventional defense. But they've never faced anyone insane enough to weaponize mathematics itself. Phase 3, she announced. Throughout the combined fleet, new weapon systems activated. These weren't devices that altered local physics, but systems that imposed entirely different sets of physical laws. Regions of space began operating according to the mathematical principles of civilizations that had never existed, following logical frameworks that had been designed specifically to be incompatible with Harvest fleet adaptive capabilities. Harvest ships found themselves trying to function in areas where their basic operating principles simply didn't work. Biomechanical systems that had evolved over millions of years of conquest discovered that evolution itself followed different rules within the human-controlled zones. They're retreating, Admiral Kithara reported, watching the tactical display with amazement. The entire Harvest fleet is pulling back beyond the engagement zone. But Chen was studying deeper sensor readings, her expression showing concern for the first time since the battle began. No, they're not retreating, they're regrouping. The Harvest fleet had withdrawn to a position several light hours away, but they weren't fleeing. Instead, the massive biomechanical constructs began to change, their hulls flowing and reshaping themselves into configurations that had never been seen before. They're adapting their entire civilization in real time, Dr. Yithalin breathed, her scientific instruments detecting changes that defied every known law of biological and technological development. Fascinating, Speaker 7 observed. They're incorporating our reality alteration techniques into their own systems. They're learning to operate in multiple dimensional frameworks simultaneously. Chen nodded grimly. We knew this might happen. The Harvest fleet's greatest strength has always been their ability to incorporate the defensive capabilities of their defeated enemies. They're turning our own weapons against us. The reformed Harvest fleet began its second approach, and the sensors revealed the true scope of their adaptation. The biomechanical ships now existed across multiple realities simultaneously, their forms shifting between dimensional frameworks in ways that made them immune to single reality attacks. All vessels prepare for Phase 4, Chen announced.
There's a Phase 4? Admiral Thompson asked.
There's always a Phase 4. Chen replied with that unsettling human smile. The beautiful thing about fighting impossible enemies is that you get to use impossible solutions. Throughout the human ships, systems that had never been revealed before began to activate. These weren't just reality alteration weapons or dimensional manipulation devices. They were systems that operated on principles so fundamentally different from normal physics that they existed outside the concept of existence itself. Initiating Paradox Cascade, Chen announced. The space around the combined fleet began to change in ways that made the previous reality alterations seem simple by comparison. Cause and effect became optional. Time flowed in directions that had no names. Most importantly, the concept of mathematical consistency was suspended within the engagement zone. The reforming Harvest fleet entered this paradox field and immediately discovered that their adaptive capabilities had become a fatal weakness. Every attempt to analyze and counter the human defenses created logical contradictions. Systems that had successfully incorporated reality alteration technology found themselves trying to exist in states that were mathematically impossible. The result was the cosmic equivalent of a computer crash that affected an entire civilization. Enemy fleet showing cascading system failures. reported sensor stations throughout the Allied Armada. Their adaptive networks are collapsing under logical paradoxes. One by one, the massive harvest constructs began to shut down as their collective intelligence became trapped in infinite loops of contradictory analysis. Ships that had successfully conquered thousands of worlds found themselves paralyzed by the simple impossibility of understanding weapons that operated outside the boundaries of logic itself. "Victory!" Admiral Kythera announced, her voice carrying a note of disbelief. But Chen was already preparing for the next phase of humanity's plan. "Not victory," she corrected. "Capture." Throughout the combined fleet, new systems activated. Instead of destroying the paralyzed harvest fleet, the human ships began to extend containment fields around the enemy vessels. The biomechanical constructs that had terrorized the galaxy for eons found themselves imprisoned within reality bubbles that prevented them from adapting or escaping. "We're taking prisoners?" Chancellor Vixorth. Galactic conflict shattered the Orion arm, then Earth's hidden armada struck. HFY Sci-Fi Stories.